Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Sorry for that momentary lapse of music there. I was trying to put the show on Twitter and Blue Sky and realized that I hadn't copied my new links yet this morning. So we got a great show for you this morning anyway. Loading 16 tons before the sun. Where there is no vision, there is no hope. We're gonna talk housing, food, triage center, Biden, the SEIU convention, and we've got a great guest for you. Timothy Reimer will be coming on the screen shortly. I'm gonna finish pasting up links to Blue Sky. Um, it's been an interesting week. We've had a lot going on, and for once, Timothy and I don't agree on something, so we might actually have an interesting conversation for you. I'm going to bring Timothy on the screen right now. Timothy, welcome. Please introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do.
Okay, hi. Timothy Reimer, he, him pronouns. I am, I guess by trade, I am a construction worker. I own my own small business, but for hobbies, I am a community activist in West Philly, focusing on environmental issues, some recently getting into some food related stuff, and I have a massive love of Halloween. And since it is now past half Halloween, I am thoroughly in Halloween mode.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Okay.
what let's do you have anything to promote? First of all, so just so folks know, we had a guest planned for this week. It wasn't Timothy, and thank you for coming by on short notice. Do you have anything to promote? Anything going on in your world that you want to get out there?
Sure. So, if any of your listeners are in West Philly, not like I don't have enough stuff to keep myself busy, but for the past year, I've been pretty involved with trying to fix the food co-op in my neighborhood, the Mariposa Co-op, and we just had our board elections. They wrapped up earlier this month,
Oh, that
and
was interesting. Actually, it was the feedback and the kind of pushback was kind of interesting. Um, uh, would you talk a little bit about that? That I saw it from the outside. I didn't really like get the chance to really like delve into it very much.
yeah,
But
I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
it really comes down to our food co-op, the Mariposa Co-op is become a cooperative in name only. Um, there are no member work shifts. You don't get a discount for being a member anymore. I mean, pretty much the only thing that you get to do as a member is to vote in the elections. And this has been sort of going on in slow motion since 2016. So, for the past 8-ish years, this has been going on. We brought in a new manager in 2016, and slowly but surely they have pushed us on this trajectory of being a corporatized store. We stock the same products that you can get at Whole Foods, which, doesn't make sense. If you want stuff from Whole Foods, you can just go to Whole Foods. It's not that far away. Um, so there's been a lot of pushback back and forth from people who want, more of a cooperative experience instead of a corporate experience. And, it's not just the shoppers as well. I guess it's been like 3 years ago now, our store unionized. Um, and, I have nothing against unionized labor, but I feel like it really, really reflects poorly on the co-op that our workers felt so put upon that they felt like they needed to unionize. Especially because our bylaws give the workers the right to democratic self-management. So, if the workers are the managers and they're supposed to be, it seems like you really shouldn't need a union in that kind of situation. But the general manager we brought in is sort of, I mean, there's not a nice way to put it. So we'll just say they're creating friction with the workforce, is the nicest way to put it. And that caused people to unionize. And as a result of that, now we can't have member owners volunteering and doing work that the union workers do, because that would violate their contract. And that's jacking our costs up. And you throw inflation into the mix and our prices are just really high. Most people can't afford to shop there anymore. And that's a problem for what's supposed to be a place in the neighborhood that people can get groceries at.
Tell me.
So,
So yes, I mean the concept makes sense from a kind of 1,000 yard perspective. How is a co-op supposed to work? Like, how is a food co-op supposed to work? I've never been a member of a food co-op. Sell the audience on the idea of a food co-op.
well, I mean, I got sold on the idea of the food co-op because when I moved to the neighborhood, they moved to less than 2 blocks from my front door. And there's, by far and away, that's the closest supermarket. But ignoring that, a cooperative, whether it be a food co-op, any other type of cooperative, is an institution that is owned by its members, that exists, or theoretically exists, to serve its members. Um, the thing that your listener base would probably be the most familiar with is like the concept of a credit union instead of a commercial bank. In that, at a credit union, the depositors own the bank, and the bank is supposed to work in their interest instead of outside shareholders and stuff. So for the food co-op, the Mariposa co-op is 50 years old. I guess maybe we're 51 now. And it started kind of as a bulk buying club for people that were able to band together and to utilize their increased purchasing power to get better deals on household staples. Um, like a food co-op versus a regular grocery store, traditionally one would expect, I mean, first, it's a smaller business, so prices are always going to be a little bit higher. Like, it's never going to compete with the likes of like ShopRite or Acme on terms of volumes of sale, and it will never be able to negotiate with suppliers to match the level of discounts one could get from those places. But that's sort of balanced out. Like, you should expect to see more healthy products. Like, what exactly healthy means is subject to interpretation, but you would think, you would find products that have like not a lot of additives, organic fruits and vegetables. Um, and in addition to that, there's supposed to be like a factor where at a co-op you should be uplifting like local businesses, and trying to source things from as nearby as possible,
And
in
and
terms of
and the overall of the
food justice.
concept is that it's driven by the membership, right? Like the people who shop there are the ones making the decisions. So
Well, I mean, in a perfect world, that is how a co-op would work. The member owners
right.
would
No,
would be the
we're
ones
talking perfect world here. We're not talking
yeah,
this specific co-op yet.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, the um in a lot of co-ops, in fact, member owners have to work at the co-op. It is not an optional kind of thing. Like, for example, the Park Slope co-op in Brooklyn. Like, you have, if you're a member, you have to work a shift. And like, I mean, they take it really far. For example, like, if you're a member and there's other people in your house who don't work shifts, like, that's a problem. Like, they're really serious about it. And for I guess that's really the biggest difference between that and a regular grocery store. And a cooperative members are expected to help in running the organization, even more so than making decisions. But the actual labor involved, should have a membership component.
Hmm.
And that's I guess that's
So,
that's more or less what a co-op is.
so with the recent elections, you and other people were supporting a slate of candidates, and they were essentially a slate of candidates to ostensibly replace the board as it existed, if I understand correctly.
Um, so I mean, sort of this co-op is governed by an 11-member board of delegates, basically a board of directors. Just we have to be different in West Philly, so we have delegates.
Hmm.
And throughout the course of the last year, our board had dwindled. We had lost, was it 5 or 6 members of the board, um, including the convener of our board, who left to be the chief liar for Kenyatta Johnson. I'm sorry, PR person, but yes, they went to be the chief liar for the worst, most corrupt member of city council.
Well, also our
Um,
city council president now, so.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, your city council president. I have no allegiance to that crumb bum. He
Oh.
uh he is one of the worst politicians we have in Philadelphia, a criminal embarrassment. But anyway, so our board had dropped down. We dropped down 5 people, and 2 people's terms expired. So 7 members were up for election in a body that is 11 people. So more than a majority of the seats were up for election. And there was a group of reform-minded individuals, people who want to make the store more like a cooperative and less like an overpriced bodega. And we didn't get all 7 seats, but 5 out of 7 seats on the board is a pretty solid start. I mean, it's not one shy of an absolute majority, but we will start making forward progress over the next year.
So some of the pushback to the campaign that I read was that the slate of candidates that was reform minded wasn't universally people of color or universally black, where the candidates that were trying to be replaced were all people of color, as far as I understand.
Well, that's not entirely accurate. Um, the candidates who there was one candidate who was replaced. They were running for re-election, and they are a person of color. And yes, the reform slate, was a bunch of white people. Now, and the opponents to reform were people of color. Like I will admit the optics of it were absolutely terrible. And we wound up in that situation because of intentional actions taken by the general manager of the store. The reform slate had people of color who wanted to run for the board. Those people of color were prevented from running for the board by the general manager.
Now,
Or
I read that, but I don't understand how that works. How could the general manager stop somebody from running?
well, that's a problem. But basically, the general manager has become a petty tyrant.
Hmm.
Like they just do whatever they want without regard for the rules. I hope they're listening, because I'll be getting a cease and desist letter if they are. Um, but it's the absolute truth. They have no regard for the bylaws of our organization, or even we use a model called policy governance. which is kind of it's not the only way to do things, but it's popular in the nonprofit world. And they even ignore the policies in our policy register, which carry less weight governance wise than our bylaws. But basically, they have the what was left of the board under their thumb, and they told the board like, oh, this person's a problem, so kick them out of the election. And that's what happened. Two candidates were prevented from running.
How,
Now,
but so, I mean, I would assume that these elections are like most elections, and you can write in candidates or you can nominate whomever you choose. How can?
no, that's you would assume wrong.
Oh, okay.
Um, you have to submit your candidacy, sort of like filing nomination papers or petitions, um, to the co-op in advance of the election. There's no write-ins whatsoever. It's just whatever candidates are selected or are accepted are the ones that are allowed to run. Um, the bylaws say that, I mean, unless a candidate has a conflict of interest that's so pervasive and continuing that they couldn't effectively do their job. Like that's the only qualifier on the qualifications for the candidates. So there was no good reason to cut these people out except to frame the election as white people versus black people. And it was unfortunate, but the membership of the cooperative saw through that ruse and still returned 5 out of 7 reformers on the slate. Um, there's this whole other mess. The co-op did not actually run the election in accordance with our bylaws. We're supposed to use a ranked choice voting system
Hmm.
with a droop quota, and we did not implement ranked choice voting. We basically did uh, alternative voting or an instant runoff,
Mm.
which is similar but not the same, and it had the effect of meaning that instead of 6 reform candidates winning, only 5 won.
Mm.
But there's not really a lot you can do after the fact to challenge the election without like hiring lawyers and stuff. And for me personally, as a nominal Republican, like getting into the business of denying elections is not, it's not high on my priority list, even if it is, in fact, I can mathematically prove it, but it's not, it's just not a good look for
Also,
me.
it's a co-op, and you're gonna be tying people up in court for not very much gain to the co-op's ultimate mission. I would assume.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly it. Like not only would it waste my resources and the resources of other people, but at the same time we would be wasting the resources of the co-op, and the co-op does not have unlimited resources which to be squandered.
Right.
So, we'll take the loss and you know we'll run more people next year.
So
'Cause
this ties into one of the topics for today, food insecurity. A recent report by WHYY noted that more than 28% of Black Philadelphians face food insecurity. And the article goes on to talk about organizations like Phil Abundance, but co-ops have also been an angle with which to attack food insecurity. Um, and 67, the article also noted 67% of area residents live below the 200% threshold for a SNAP. Um, what, how does insecurity affect the co-op? How does the co-op help or hinder a recovery from food insecurity?
well, I mean, we theoretically help by having a place in our community where people can get healthy food 7 days a week. Um, I mean, I wish I could say we were helping more, but unfortunately, our the pricing structure that's implemented is just it's so outrageous that I don't think it really does much to help people who are food insecure. I mean, we do accept EBT at the co-op, um, and we have a program that allows lower income people who can't afford the membership equity to join the co-op. So we are trying to be inclusive, but our inclusivity doesn't really matter if our products aren't geared towards a consumer that has a very limited budget for food. And that's one of the many things that the reform minded people want to see change at our co-op.
Yeah, I was going to
But
ask, is that on the radar of the folks that were trying to reform the co-op?
I mean, absolutely. It was brushed on that the reformers are all white, and I'll just put it out there, we are in fact all white or white passing. um at least the people who ran. There are plenty of people of color in the group who want to see changes, but the our demographic is we're pretty much middle class people. And even for the middle class people in our group, we can't even afford to do regular shopping at the co-op. Like it's a huge problem. um and for a while we sort of skated by on the gentrification and growth in the neighborhood. Like the store did all right because our neighborhood was or is an expensive place to live. So you've got Penn grad students and Penn kids who have rich parents paying for their bills. And then you have lots of white collar professional workers making like six figures a year. So when the economy was booming, that was enough to carry us along, but it really wasn't doing anything for the people in our community who are not economically advantaged. And I mean, we do have like certain products, a small selection of products that are competitively priced, but it's not we don't attract that clientele. And so even though we have some more affordable products, it like people aren't going to come to the store for the few things that we have and then spend a bunch of money on other things they can't afford. Like if you're food insecure, you're not buying a $5 tomato. I
Right,
mean,
right.
I'm not food insecure and I'm not buying a $5 tomato.
No, I'm not buying
Yeah.
a $5 tomato either, but I mean, a lot of what many co-ops resolved, at least temporarily, was food deserts, areas of the city and of cities around the country that had no access to food, to essentially, like to non-processed food. And it's unfortunate that the model seems to have difficulty in the long term with maintaining pricing and getting food that's affordable into the area that doesn't have the service of grocery stores. Um,
Yeah,
it's
well, I mean that is the one thing that we were successful in was addressing a food desert. 50 years ago, I mean, I guess first like 50 years ago, supermarkets weren't necessarily the prevalent means of food distribution that they are now. But 50 years ago, there were not an abundant selection of choices to get healthy food in the neighborhood I live in West Philadelphia. And that's where the co-op was. That's the idea that started the co-op. And for a long time, we were pretty much your only choice for healthy food in the neighborhood. um now we have like places like supermarkets like Trader Joe's and Wegmans and Whole Foods that cater to that market on a larger scale. And even just in the neighborhood, it's changed immensely. Um, we have the Clark Park Farmers Market every weekend, even in the winter, and people love it.
Hmm.
And that's a great place that people get lots of affordable and healthy. Well, it's not really affordable, but they get healthy and fresh food that's not processed. Um, there's actually a new farmers market will be opening up at in Malcolm X Park very soon. There is a bill 2400380 working its way through city council to authorize the new farmers market in Malcolm X Park. So we should be seeing that, I'd expect, by next year at the latest. And there's like the pandemic pantry, Spruce Hill Provisions, all of these other kind of places now where you can get food, like healthy food. So our food desert, solution is sort of being rendered obsolete by changes in the grocery market in West Philly.
Yeah,
So
it would be
for a
nice
time
to
anyway.
it would be nice to see perhaps like the co-op solution being able to be flexible and provide things in a changing market, but it does seem that it's kind of difficult to pivot that model into uh, when service needs change. Um, what I wanted to transition to in this discussion is just the petition that's been put out to halt the Fairmount Drug Treatment Center program
Ooh,
that Mayor Parker just kind of randomly announced. Actually, even Mayor Parker didn't. It wasn't the one that announced it. It was kind of dropped like a 2-ton turd in the middle of a speech by in the middle of a proposal by one of the city council members on the what are they calling it, the Kensington Coalition or something like that.
yeah,
um,
it's the Kensington Caucus, maybe.
yeah, the Kensington
Uh,
Caucus. So yeah, one of the members of the Kensington Caucus several weeks ago uh, randomly made public notice that the Parker administration was looking to open its first triage center, they're calling them, in the former nursing home on Girard Avenue in Fairmount, and at 2100 West Girard, and a lot of people were shocked. I hesitate even to I wouldn't hesitate to even say that the mayor's office was a little bit shocked and caught on a back heel. Um, the part of the mayor's uh, solution to the Kensington drug market is what they're calling triage centers. Nobody has any idea what these triage centers are supposed to look like, what they're supposed to do, what services they're supposed to provide, how they're supposed to be funded, where they're supposed to exist, or what the methodology of getting people into them is going to be. However, they seem to be the nod by the Kensington Caucus and the Parker administration to the idea of uh, care first. Making sure that people, putting the care of the people in homelessness and in drug addiction into the forefront, which is the better way to solve drug addiction and homelessness. Making sure that their needs are met first before um, you know, trying to treat them for anything, because people can't be treated for things that they don't want to be treated for. So, um, what?
yeah, I mean, that's like the triage center thing, especially the opposition to it, it really boils down to people are assholes. It, there's just no other way to put it. Just NIMBY assholes. Like we have this problem in our city of addiction. You know, we can't ignore it. We've been doing that for, I don't know, 20 years, longer, really. You know, like we can't sweep it under the L. The L is not big enough to sweep this mess underneath it anymore. And like it or not, we have to do something. Like that's the point we're at. You know, over 1,000 Philadelphia, or 1,000 people in our city every year, more than 1,000 people overdose and die.
Yeah,
A lot of
okay.
them just in the streets.
When uh, I just want to latch onto that for a second. We have to do something. Yes, we have to do something, but like, haven't people been trying to do something for the past, like, I don't know, 20 years or so?
No, I mean not in a real way. The official strategy for the past 20 years has been to not so gently push the heroin trade towards the L, specifically around the Allegheny and Tioga stops, like in between there. That's been the strategy, is just to give up one part of the city to the drug trade. And the theory being that if we let it happen there, we can at least contain it. But
I don't, so I don't understand this complaint, because there was a TV series, what, The Wire, that came out, uh like, maybe like 2 years into the period in my life when I was commuting up to Kensington and Allegheny every day. I worked on, I work on Frankfurt Avenue. I would take the L to Kensington and Allegheny, get off the L, and walk to Frankfurt Avenue literally every day. Most times at like 2:30 at night. It wasn't what it is now. And it wasn't that way. I worked that job for like 12 years. It wasn't that way that entire time. The In my understanding and experience of the area, it changed to what it is now sometime in the last like 8 years.
I mean, it was it's a transition. Like it didn't get how it is overnight. Like the basic premise was we pushed all the drug traffic, well, not all of it, as much as we could, into one area and deprioritized any type of enforcement. And then, I mean, to your point, maybe not 8 years ago, but what are we? We're coming up about 6 years ago. We elected a progressive prosecutor who is, not charging low level drug offenses, who's not charging low level retail offenses. And these are things that are fueling people's addictions. You can go out and steal up to $500 worth of stuff from a business, and you're basically just going to be given a ticket.
Do you think people are
You're not.
bringing calculators when they go to, like, to do retail theft?
I mean, I don't think people are bringing calculators, but the threshold is high enough that someone who has an addiction problem can go into a store and pretty easily steal something that they can turn around and sell for enough money to get high, and it's not the whatever the value of what they've stolen isn't going to be enough to push them over the threshold. Like
I mean, okay,
I don't.
maybe I don't spend enough time in neighborhoods affected by this. I mean, I would say I do, because I would say my neighborhood is affected by this. I live in South Philly. We're affected by the push for people to be pushed out from Kensington, because every time there's a push for people to be pushed out of Kensington, they move down here. So, and which I don't mind. I'm actually, like, I was pro safe injection site at, the medical center down here. And I really hate NIMBYs that, aren't willing to assist the idea. Look, if you want these problems solved, yes, you have to do something, and some of that might be sacrificing your desire to not be anywhere near the drug problem. You're going to be near it whether you like it or not. So why don't we try and affect a change in it while we're forced to be near it? Is my theory, but maybe I'm
So I
crazy.
mean, I'm with you on that. I mean, it really is NIMBY assholes. Like people, what it comes down to is we have a lot of people in Philadelphia with a really serious addiction problem. And, people want to call them junkies or addicts or, whatever other pejorative terms, but these are people, like just flat out. These are like our neighbors, members of our community, members of your church, they could be people in your family. Like they're just people and they have a problem. What they need is help, from not just the people around them, but society in general. And what people are disagreeing on is what form that help, has should come in. Um, I'm with the mayor that there should be a little bit of tough love involved. But I'm not saying we should just lock people up and try to police our way out of this problem. But that can be a way to encourage people. Like
Well, I mean,
all of the all of the people I know who got clean after they did some time in jail or prison. Like very very few people. It's not impossible, but people aren't like
I
just
would
waking up
say
one day and being like, I want to be sober today.
I would say that jail slash prison slash consequent like societal consequences for drug addiction are kind of an Occam's razor of that's probably the wrong phrase or the wrong reference, but they are kind of like a dividing line between getting out of and getting in further into addiction, because you have the problem with crime and punishment echoing down through a person's life, and making them, further destitute, further having further difficulties getting treatment, having further difficulties getting out of the situation that they're in. I mean, just look at so right now the center that we're talking about runs a homeless shelter. It's a low barrier homeless shelter, which, for the purposes of low barrier, means that they just have to not be currently on drugs. That isn't the case with most of the homeless shelters. Most homeless shelters require a history of no narcotics use and no narcotics convictions. And they can look that up. They can look up whether you've ever even been arrested for narcotics use, and they can deny your entry into the homeless shelter for that arrest. So you can't arrest your way out of a homelessness problem and a drug abuse problem when the rest of your system is set up to continue to punish people who are in addiction. You have to solve the problem holistically. You can't have somebody that wants, that's addicted to drugs. They want to get off the streets, but they can't find a way off the streets. And then what are they going to do? Like, I don't know. I don't use drugs, but if I was out on the streets and everybody was telling me no, I can't go into this shelter because I had a drug conviction 3 years ago, I'm going to fucking go find some place to go get high because I'm pissed off.
Yeah, well, so I mean, but that's a problem with the services we have to help people with homelessness and addiction. Now, I'm not a fan of arresting people. That's not my solution to the problem. But I'm just looking at it objectively. Like you get arrested, you get a break. Like you're not out there just getting drugs all the time. You get a little detox, a pause, time out, whatever. Like sober up for a few minutes. Like that's not happening now. Now, like should should we be, stigmatizing people for their entire lives because they have a criminal conviction? No, I mean, even if it's a drug, it does not just drug convictions, but theoretically, you're supposed to do your time, pay your debt to society, and that's it. Like we shouldn't be punishing people after the fact, after they've been punished, for if we can help it. I mean, there are certain things, like sexual predators, for example, like that you're not gonna get the
even
political will
even
to
in
not
even in
segregate them.
even in drug recovery, they talk about the basis of AA and other drug recovery programs that may or may not work. I mean, I have statistics that show that they don't work in a large majority. But the idea is that people don't actually change. So, if you've been addicted to drugs in the past, the only way you're going to not have that addiction is to not use drugs any longer. You're never going to lose that addiction. That addiction is never going to go away. You're never going to be without it. You're never going to recreationally be able to use your drug of choice or your alcohol of choice. You're just going to be able to what every recovery program tries to introduce is an element of control, self control. Um, so, but my problem with tough love is that it's been proven not to work. Like, last week or week before, I cited the examples of San Francisco and Seattle, both of which tried this kind of approach to their homeless encampments. And what they saw was that when you have this kind of approach, you have to keep providing very expensive services nonstop because the people that are involved in that system don't get out of it. When they have that tough love approach, it's not self actuated, and the only road to recovery is self actualization. So yes, no, people don't wake up every morning going, I want to be off drugs now. But the only way to get people off drugs is to put them in a position where they do decide that they want to be off drugs for themselves. It can't be coerced. It can't be driven by outside factors. It's an entirely internal decision.
So I mean, I would agree that it is up to the individual to sober up, but you can certainly make it easier for them. Like addiction in a lot of cases is the symptom, not necessarily the
Sure,
disease.
yeah, absolutely.
That
And
looking by looking at like why people are using drugs in the first place, like that's a longer term better approach to solving the problem. But we can't just give up on the other people that are there. Like
no, and
I like so,
so
well,
the thing that I would say that you're the second person I've heard say this, that our strategy was essentially to ignore and isolate the problem. Um,
yeah, I mean that's what we've been doing
I,
for a while.
I'd say that's the results. I don't think that was the strategy, because I think that the strategy from my activism, from the place where I sit, what I've seen is a lot of people trying to affect strategies that should work and being denied by either NIMBYism or law and order first people. Um, so, like, safe injection sites provably work. Like, there's been enough of them for long enough now that they provably work. Like, they provably reduce both deaths from overdose and area drug addiction percentages. They reduce drug sales. They reduce homelessness. They reduce all kinds of things associated with this entire problem. But we can't get one built in the city of Philadelphia because at every level, whether it be homeowners in the area, local government, national government, international pushback, we get pushback at every level from people who wouldn't usually associate with each other against a concept that is essentially the same thing as what we're talking about now, a triage center, but without the negative consequences that are associated with a triage center. I don't understand why we're a, why we're abandoning a strategy that we haven't even been able to try yet.
Well, I mean, I support safe injection sites. They are, as you were saying, a scientifically proven method of harm reduction. But I also understand why people don't want one in their neighborhood. For me, I would open one somewhere where people are less apt to complain about it. My solution would be to put the first one on UPenn's campus. And I mean, somebody's smiling when I say that, but I'm actually serious. There's already a methadone clinic there, so they already have the infrastructure and they're already servicing that population. It's at like the nexus of all of the public transportation lines, so it's easily accessible for people who don't have cars or are on a budget. I mean, you have world-class programs for every discipline you could imagine that would be necessary to help treat people with addiction, available at Penn and Drexel. And, that's a lot of students who need realistic clinical experience that could be called upon. And they might even be happy to do it to get the experience for their jobs. So yeah, like if you tried to push one there instead of the middle of somebody's residential neighborhood, you'd probably do better with it.
Well, I mean, the site that in South Philly that was shouted down is a medical center. It's attached to both Chop and Jefferson.
Yeah, but I mean, but there's nowhere in South Philly except the Navy Yard that's not, surrounded by people's homes. Like at least, like
I mean, the
Penn's
problem
campus.
exists next to people's homes. What are you gonna do? Just put it, like in the middle of a industrial park? I don't.
I mean, it would be less convenient, but yeah, you.
But the entire point of it is the convenience. Like it's getting
I mean
it's providing
that.
something that people want to go to, so that instead of being on the street.
I mean, look, like I am for this, but pretending that there's not going to be opposition because it's a good
I
idea,
I I I
doesn't
don't
help.
pretend that there's not going to be opposition. What I'm frustrated by is the idea that it's not a good idea because there's opposition. Of course there's going to be opposition. There's going to be opposition to anything. Look at this petition for what ostensibly people wanted instead of safe injection sites. There's going to
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean it would be the first one would in the city. It would be smart to do it in a place where there's not as many residents to complain. I mean, I suggest UPenn's campus because there's not a lot of actual residents there. It's all college kids, and college kids aren't organized enough, and aren't a bunch of NIMBY assholes like the rest of the people who are complaining about this. So you could cram one in there, and once you have one and you could show people, all right, it's not like, oh, this works in New York or this works in the Netherlands. It's like, oh wow, like this actually works in Philadelphia. And then you move one a little bit closer. Like one's not enough. They do need to be spread around. but the idea that they have to be like so convenient is also ridiculous. Like, you had an army of people living on the train tracks in, well, near Kensington. Like, that wasn't convenient. They just went there because they could.
Well, because people
And
weren't hassling them there.
yeah, and so I mean that's what I'm saying. Like, so if you're not going to get hassled at a safe injection site, but it's a little bit out of the way, it's a start. Like,
Well,
and it'd
and
be
then
it'd be
you need
easier to
to
get
you need to create the infrastructure around it that they don't get hassled at any given, so that there is a community there for them to lean on, because they need help with food and shelter, not just the access to drugs and access to healthcare. Um,
well, and when they're in one place at a safe injection site or whatever you want to call it, a triage center, whatever, it makes it easier to deliver services.
Yes, which
Like
is the
that.
point of a safe injection site that I think that people never understood or don't get, is that it's not about giving people a safe place to do drugs. It's about giving them a safe place to exist. Um,
Yeah, well, I mean that's because people dehumanize those suffering from addiction. That call them junkies or addicts and forget that there's actually a person involved.
yeah.
And it's a mess. But I mean, when
Let's
it comes
talk.
down to
Let's talk about the thing that we disagree about.
oh yeah,
I don't think we actually disagree on this. Is the funny part. I think that we have a different take on it. I am annoyed with the Parker administration so far, which I'm sure everybody who even samples my social media activity probably knows. Um, the Parker administration issued what I'd like to call an edict, that all city employees must return to office 5 days a week, 5 of 7 days a week, um, beginning July 15th. So right when city council goes out on summer break, which I find hilarious. So yeah, all city employees are going to be returning to the office 5 days a week. Notably, no union leaders joined Parker for the announcement, fueling speculation that they could oppose the move. But Mayor Parker said she does not believe that working from home is something that is subject to union negotiations. Quote, I, as mayor of the city of Philadelphia, do not believe that the return to work full time in person is bargainable, unquote. I believe that's a glove throw that isn't back. I think she's punching out of her weight class with that a little bit.
I mean, maybe not. Like, clearly we do disagree on this. For your listeners, my opinion is that the white collar workers of the city of Philadelphia can quit their whining and go back to the office. They're the they're the highest paid employees of the city. They all have to live in the city as a condition of their employment for the city. So it's not like they're commuting like, super far. They're all already here. The overwhelming majority of them were hired with the expectation that they would show up to the office 5 days a week. Like, and if they don't like it, they can quit. Like,
So and so why I say I don't think we actually disagree with on this is, while I entirely support the idea of remote work, and I think that science, we haven't you and I haven't settled on a study that we agree on. But I also didn't. I have to admit I didn't put much work into finding that study. Um, but there are studies that say that productivity increased because of remote work. Pretty much every study done since the beginning of the pandemic was surprised. It was mostly surprised results that uh, productivity went up. People did more work and got more done. I don't know, something to do with comfort, lack of commute, better mental health, less interference from, people just stopping by your work site and sticking their 2 cents in. Um, stuff like that. I mean, you and I both know this. When you're working on a job and you have and you and I both do things where we have to show up in person. There's no way around it. But you know that when you're working on a job with other people, it's going to go slower than if you just have some time to yourself just to stick your nose into what you're doing and get it done.
I mean, there. So I have yet to see a study with a reputable like set of data that it's based on that's not funded by somebody who has an inherent interest in working from home. Like I'm I'm not against the concept that it could be more productive. I just need to see some type of actual proof
So
instead of
what I was gonna do is look up, I know these numbers exist nationally. I'm not sure how locally or how granular I can get the data, but like gross product of an area, the gross domestic product of the U.S. went up during the work from home era. Um, and it was surprising, like because the number of hours worked and hours paid went down. So like the GDP went up while number of hours went down. So that's everybody was more productive. That's what those are. Like the studies that I'm citing, and those were federal studies, and there were a lot of federal studies done because of like organizations like the military, and contractors for the federal government employees, even so multiple departments did these studies and found that it surprisingly, like work from home works well. um,
uh, for some people and for some tasks, I'm sure it's not a problem.
yeah.
But just on the face of it, that the notion that people are just going to work at home and not dick around, you know, I honestly just I have a hard time
I don't
believing
think
that.
it's for everyone, but then I've been a freelancer my entire career, and so working from home isn't an unfamiliar thing to me. So, I don't think it's for everyone. I think that a lot of people do benefit from the home environment or an environment that they can absolutely control, and know that they aren't being monitored or having their shoulder looked over, or that doesn't come with rules about how long you can use the bathroom or whatever. um
Yeah, I mean, like that, I guess that's the other part of it. I have a really hard time grasping. So I also do not work in a field where I can telecommute. But when I did, when I worked in an office after college, my office experience was really nice. Like nobody cared how long you went to the bathroom for. You wanted to go smoke a cigarette, you go smoke a cigarette. You know,
yeah, that's all changed in the last 15, 20 years. Like that doesn't exist anymore.
well, yeah, I mean, if that's the case, that sucks. And maybe that's informing, why I feel the way I do is because I'm used to a different paradigm. But when I worked in an office, it really wasn't that bad. We got stuff done. There was, I mean, it was a technology related business, so it was useful when I had an issue to just, instead of writing an email waiting for somebody to get back to me, I could walk over to somebody's desk. You know, if it was a really big issue, I might have to walk over to the next building to talk to somebody in a different department. But, we got stuff done and efficiently. Like I really just don't think that people are going to give it their all when they're, at home without any supervision. And I
I
mean
mean,
that's
just they do seem to. It seems to be counterintuitive for folks that are of the mindset that people need to be supervised, but it seems that a large number of people don't actually need constant supervision. Um,
I mean, I would love for that to be true. It just doesn't line up with everything we know and understand about human
I don't
nature.
know if there's well, to that point, there are a large number of there is a large body of information that, like, the percentage of people that would be quote unquote lazy if, like, say there's universal basic income and nobody has to work. There's a lot of numbers associated with this and repeatably associated with experiments in this, that, like, it's only like between 2 and 10% of the population that would take advantage of the labors of others, and then the grand majority of the population feels like it has to contribute regardless of whether that contribution is being paid for or not. Whether they're seeing an immediate return for their contribution or not, the grand majority of people. So, and I think this is probably evolutionarily correct, because, if you had, if evolutionarily, if we had a bent towards laziness and not participating, not, contributing, um, we'd probably die off as a species. So I think it makes sense, from that perspective. Um, but also, people just aren't as lazy as we think they are. Um,
I would love to be wrong about that. I just,
I
you
I
know,
I I I didn't think that way until people started showing me results of experiments in universal basic income and stuff. But yeah, it holds track with, like, the percentage of people who commit actual welfare fraud, and stuff like that. Like, the percentages, like, seem to continue to make sense. Like, there is a percentage of the population that is, like, irresponsible and won't contribute unless, forced to, but that those percentages seem to hold true no matter what the methodology is, like, when you look into it. So, like, there seems to be this small percentage of the population that's antisocial or doesn't follow along with what the rest of the population feels like. Um, I don't know.
well, I mean, so whether I like it or not, whether the mayor likes it or not, working from home isn't going away.
Right.
Like,
And
so,
and
so
my greater laugh in this discussion is the quote that I quoted, which, if Mayor Parker thinks that she's going to take any aspect of working away from union negotiations, the unions are going to turn around and bitch slap her and be like, "No, we're negotiating for that now. Actually, we agree with you, but we're going to take that and run with it, because that's now something that you've brought to the forefront." And so I expect to see union negotiations with the city arguing for time for work from home in the next round of union negotiations, because you don't challenge collective bargaining like that. Everything is on the table for collective bargaining. You can't tell a bunch of people that that they don't have the right to argue whether they get to work from home or not.
I mean, you could tell people whatever you want. It's not a good idea,
That's what
but
I'm saying. You can, yes, you can tell people. You sure you can, yes, but there are consequences. Don't tell.
yeah.
Don't dangle the steak in front of the Rottweiler unless you want to get bit on the hand. Okay, like it's just dumb.
Well, but so, why is Mayor Parker doing this? Like,
Why is
if
she
the
doing
work
that?
gets,
Because the tax base of the city of Philadelphia is the most ridiculously organized tax base in all of the Western world and results of European colonialism. Like the tax base here makes absolutely no friggin' sense and is so convoluted that it doesn't match anywhere else in the country. Like we get most of our money from people that work here and do where else in
y-
the
y-
world do you just randomly tax people for working in your city?
I mean, so our tax structure is ridiculous. Like, there's plenty of room for improvement. You'll get no arguments from me there, but it's about more than taxes. So our entire downtown is is built and organized around the notion that there's going to be a massive influx of workers every day coming to these office towers and frequenting the businesses that are downtown. And we don't have that anymore. Like,
Yes, and
we have some of it. We don't have it like we used to.
well,
And if
I
to,
disagree with that because I've been downtown a lot the past 2 weeks, and I would say, and actually the past couple of years because I've been dealing with banking issues where I had to go to the bank a lot. I would say the traffic downtown in Center City is probably like quintuple what it's ever been in the past. Like in my experience of the past, I used to be able to drive into Center City and find a parking spot within like 5, 6 blocks. You know, now you can't go to Center City and find a parking spot. You you used to be able to get on the Broad Street line and have a seat. Now, no matter what time of day I'm on the Broad Street line, it is packed and it sucks. And it's still packed. Like, service sucks, service levels suck, cleanliness sucks, rates are up, and it's still friggin' packed. The like it's packed and everybody's getting off in Center City. Everybody's going to the other parts of the city when they're leaving. Go to the Reading Terminal Market. You can't walk in there anymore. Any day of the week, any time of the day that they're open, you cannot walk. There's no time of the day when there's not a line at almost every shop. I don't get it.
I mean, well, maybe that doesn't really line up with my experience. I mean, I don't often take the subway, but the past couple of times that I have found myself taking the subway, I get on and I get a seat every time, which for me is a new experience. Like, usually I don't. But I'm taking the L and not the Broad Street line.
Well, I mean
So
the L. To be fair, I've most recently been using the L between 15th and 30th, but the L is packed too, um, in both directions. But we use the L to take our kiddo to and from daycare sometimes, and it's packed. I can't even get a seat. Carrying a baby, I can't get a seat.
I get I don't know. I mean, I'm guess I'm just lucky, but I've been t like when I take the L, it's usually because I'm going down to Northern Liberties to help out an elderly friend. And yeah, I mean, I've been very lucky just every time. No problems. Even near rush hour,
Mm.
surprisingly. Getting
Uh,
on with my bike, getting with my bike, and I can even get a seat where I can sit down with my bike. I mean, I guess, really, like we're getting away from the point is like the mayor. has an obligation to address, the situation downtown.
Does she have an
And
obligation to, though, or does she just have people lobbying her to address it this way?
I mean, she has to, like, the changes that work from home are bringing, mean that there's like systemic issues in the city that need to be addressed. Are they addressed this way? They addressed some other way? You know, that's that's up in the air. I mean, yeah, we could turn some of these office towers into housing, and then there would be people there all the time. So it's not the only solution, but all over the place, like,
The
government
I
is asking businesses to start coming back into work. If our government wants people to do that,
I think that's a
we
lot
need
of
to we need to set the
lobbying.
example.
I think
Well,
that's a lot of lobbying. I think that the people asking for government to have people come back to work are the people with the real estate that's now devalued. There's that building that went up for auction, and it was, like it was a tenth of its value that it last sold for.
yeah, that
Um,
one that one in that one in Texas, was
yeah,
it Houston or something?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's so there is some lobbying going on, but also, like, yeah, if business taxes, take a nosedive, the city is going to need to reevaluate its tax structure in a major way. And that's really unpopular. It doesn't matter if you're still paying the same amount. Like, any type of new tax, people aren't having it. And this is it's one way that the mayor can address the problem. It's we'll have to agree to disagree. I mean, I like it during the day when my neighborhood has less people crowding it out. By all means, people can get in their cars and leave so I can have some peace and quiet during the day. Like, I'm good with that. But, time will tell. Like I said, it's work from home isn't going away. You know, the city employees, they're gonna go back to work. It's what's gonna happen, whether I like it or don't like it. They're not all gonna quit. So, come the 15th of July, it's what's happening.
Yeah. Well, I need to wrap up because I got to get to Center City. Speaking of getting to Center City and working on site, I wanted to briefly touch on election things. Biden, some recent polling in Philadelphia, Biden is losing some votes from black voters. Um, which I find interesting. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, real quick.
Well, so, yeah, I mean, it's like Joe Biden just doesn't want to be reelected.
Well, yeah,
Like, everything he's doing is just the wrong way to go about doing things. You know,
yeah. I keep
and
saying we're running an election with the only two people that could lose the election to each other. Um, it's
that
fascinating.
yeah, well, so, I mean, honestly, by my way of thinking, we're having a redo of last time. Everybody who hates Trump still hates Trump. You know, Now more people hate Biden than used to hate Biden. I don't think anybody ever liked Joe Biden. I'm pretty sure Jill doesn't like Joe. Like like he's not a likable guy. Like, he just looks smarmy. You just kind he has a punchable face. Like, just all around, like, not the ideal candidate. Basically, Joe had a black friend once. Like, that's
Yeah,
all he
he's a
that's all he's got going
neolib.
for him.
He's a neolib who really likes trains, and that's what he's got going for him. Unfortunately, that doesn't carry a national election, but neither does, running as a three times divorced philanderer with money troubles and two convictions. That doesn't really work either. Um,
No, it doesn't. But so here's the thing: the people who supported Trump are still going to support Trump.
well, yeah, but
Like,
that's what Republicans have always done really well is ignoring whatever you know whatever issues they have with a specific cause or candidate in order to get the thing that they want.
yeah, and that's why they're polling better right now. Like basically because Biden is going around pissing off, all of the young progressive voters. It's just his gleefully co-signing genocide, you know, like encouraging basically just encouraging the police to bust up these encampments in not so subtle ways,
Hmm.
getting on and talking about how we need law and order and how this isn't a valid protest and the other thing. It's just he is really out to piss everybody off. And it's like, I'm gonna release some gas from the petroleum reserves. People throw people a bone. Like it's not gonna cut it. Like so.
This brings up our pre-show conversation of Fetterman. Are we just programming like WWE into our politics now? Like, Fetterman did a full-on heel turn, like, and for those that don't watch wrestling entertainment, heel turn is all the characters in WWE play good guys and bad guys alternatively, and they often change personalities of the character for not real good reasons. Their transitions are worse than mine, but as a methodology of creating interest in the story. Um, Fetterman seems to have adopted this tactic. I don't understand it. He's just like literally going out there and like air horning people in the face with his bad ideas.
Well, so I mean, that's who Fetterman has always been. Like progressives got behind Fetterman in a big way, but this is the guy who, while he was mayor, chased down a black jogger for the crime of jogging while black with a
Right,
shotgun in his hand, no less.
right,
Like like whether or not the guy was committing a crime, which he wasn't, you know, is besides the point. Like the mayor of the town is not a law enforcement
right.
officer, and they should know.
Should not be
th-
chasing people down with a shotgun, regardless of whether he thinks they committed a crime or not.
exactly. And like this is the guy that everybody elected. Like, and now they want to, be surprised that this is the way he acts. Like, I mean, I'm not surprised. I mean, I'm surprised at how gleeful he is
I,
about it.
I'm only surprised in that the folks around him haven't been able to talk him out of talk him into a better PR position. That's what I'm surprised
Y-
about.
that is surprising, but he's a little rich kid. I guarantee you his entire life, his parents were supportive, telling him, "Oh, you're so great," ignoring his flaws. And it just stinks of his personality. Like he doesn't admit when he's wrong. I mean, that's a rarity in politicians to begin with. So, I can't hold him to that standard and nobody else. But no, just everything about the guy. Like, come on, put on a fucking suit for once. Like, you know, like like walking around, looking like a high school dropout. Like it's just, it's
Well, he's working
embarrassing.
class. He's working
Yeah,
class.
but he's not working class. His parents like own an insurance company.
Well,
Or his dad owns an insurance company. Like, he's a little rich kid. His parents paid his bills when he was the mayor. Like
Last thing I want
he's
to I want to talk about is the SEIU, the Service Employees International Union, is meeting this week in Philadelphia at the Convention Center. It's their quadrennial, that's every 4 years meeting, international meeting. They had a keynote speech from Kamala Harris and Justin Trudeau separately yesterday, which may be why you had some trouble getting around town. Um, and they elected their first ever black woman as president of the union. Um, and it's 100 and something year old union, so that's kind of actually surprising. Day before that. They're meeting through today, and they are at the convention center, and they have folks outside giving out information and talking about the union. So if you're curious about what unions are doing internationally, it's actually an interesting conversation and an interesting story. I wish I had more time to talk about it, but unions internationally aren't as monocultural and mono gold as they are in the United States, and they aren't as monocolored as they are in Philadelphia. Um, so, yeah, if you're interested in what unions can be, perhaps some would say should be, go check it out. Go talk to some of the members of the union out there and see what they're doing around the world for workers' rights, and that kind of thing. Your thoughts on unions?
Yeah, I mean, I like to see, workers gathering together and, trying to get their piece of the pie. Um, I don't really have any vested interest, in the convention that's going on. I thank you for, thank them for bringing it here, and giving the economic boost to our city. But good on them. I mean, maybe they could ease up with their with their political party, like their that the SEIU is the working families party,
Yes.
like you know like without a doubt that is who they are. And so I don't like the working families party because I think they're bending the rules. But these are people who are getting stuff done, you know and they're out there sticking up for their workers.
To your
So
earlier point, I think sometimes whether we like what's being done or not, it's more important that something get done. Um,
yeah, like they're doing it. Like they're not just a union, they're not local 98,
mhm,
sitting there collecting their dues and using it to corrupt our government. Like they're doing things that I don't agree with everything they're doing, but they're operating from what I think is an outside perspective. They're operating in good faith,
mhm,
and they're trying and succeeding to make things better for their members.
mhm.
So good on them.
Yeah. There's some interesting additions to the union in the last couple of years. I saw some groups representing uh, college. What is that? Not professors, but
The teachers assistants and the
yeah,
graduate researchers.
yeah.
Yeah, they just organized at Penn. I don't know if it was SEIU,
Yeah, it's
but
SEIU. So they're bringing those folks under SEIU, and they're bringing healthcare employees that aren't doctors into SEIU as well, which actually really fits in with their whole original mandate as representing service workers. So mostly like janitorial and labor kind of folks. Um,
yeah, actually there was one thing about this convention that got me. So you had mentioned that the vice president was in town, and so after her speech at the convention center, she came over to West Philly and went to Jim's for a cheesesteak. and some jackass convinced her to get her cheesesteak with whiz instead of provolone. And I am
I will never
I am
understand provolone or whiz. I'm entirely give me American cheese on it. I'm fine. That's great.
I mean, well, it provolone or it's not a cheesesteak.
No,
This
no,
is
it's still a cheesesteak with American. I don't think it's a cheesesteak with whiz, but
no, well, I mean, whiz is not cheese,
right.
so
That's
you
that's the
can't have
problem.
yeah, you can't have a cheesesteak without cheese. And so, like that is the thing that has caught my eye the most with this convention was the vice president shaming our cheesesteaks. But that's pretty much it. So I know you got to get downtown.
hmm
What else was on the list? I think
That
there
was
was one
it.
other thing.
Yeah. That was it. We can wrap up. Do you have any last thoughts?
Yeah. So just circling back to where we were starting. If any of your listeners live in West Philly and are members of the Mariposa Co-op, if they want to learn more about how people are trying to make the Mariposa Co-op a better place, you can email friends.of.r.coop@gmail.com, and that is the group of people who are trying to reform the co-op. If anybody wants to be a party to that, reach out because it's we need members to care. So that's my current project. And oh, also, let me double check the date because this is a great one. Is it June? So yeah, Saturday, June 15th. Uh, I'm a member of a group called the Cobbs Creek Ambassadors. We clean up Cobbs Creek Park. But we are having a party or a festival, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, on Saturday, June 15th at Cobbs Creek and Thomas Avenue. There's going to be free food. We'll have like a bounce house for the kids. We're going to be giving away native plants. The Audubon Society is going to be there. We're going to have some guided bird walks. The Mycology Club's going to be there. We're going to have some guided mushroom walks, take people through, show them some of the nature and stuff. There'll be live music. So anybody who's in, I mean, whether or not you're in West Philly, but it's very convenient if you're in West Philly, and you have nothing to do that Saturday, come on out and check it out. We'll be there from 11 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Awesome.
And, completely free event. Everybody is welcome. Even for the park, we will have at least one porta potty, so there will be facilities. I mean, we have one now. There should be more than one, but at least one. There will be facilities, and you have a kid, so that for a lot of people that is a concern that there be somewhere that they can relieve themselves. And so that's everything on my agenda.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us, and I really appreciate you jumping in last minute.
I mean, I'm always happy. Thank you for having me, and for your listeners, thank you for listening to me ramble for an hour and change. All right,
All right, thanks.
all right, no
Thank you,
problem.
listeners, for and viewers for joining us each week. We'll have another episode for you next week. Let's see, our guest next week hasn't been selected yet, but we will have that information up as soon as we can. Really appreciate you tuning in. Have a great rest of your week, everybody.